8 Americans are dead after an Ethiopian Airlines flight crashed shortly after takeoff on Sunday. Officials say the pilot tried to return to the airport in Addis Ababa.
Investigators are recovering the black box from the flight, and they're looking to learn more about what happened in the moments right before the crash. CBS News correspondent Deborah Pata is in Johannesburg with more.
Piles of mangled debris lie scattered around the crash site. Strewn amongst the wreckage, items of clothing and personal belongings, a jarring reminder of just how many lives were lost. The arrival board simply read "Flight delayed" at Nairobi's international airport yesterday. While back in Ethiopia, reality began to sink in for frantic relatives. After the news was announced, the Ethiopian Airlines CEO faced the public.
We are very, very saddened. Our heart is broken for this tragic accident.
Flight 302 took off at 8:38 local time from Ethiopia's Bole International Airport in Addis Ababa, heading for Nairobi. Seconds later, the pilot made a distress call wanting to turn back. Then at just 6 minutes into the flight, all contact was lost and the plane crashed in Debre Zeit, 31 miles south of the capital. An eyewitness described seeing the plane go down. It came directly from the sky downwards, he said, and we heard a huge explosion. The jet was a new Boeing 737 MAX 8 that the airline had recently purchased at the end of last year. On the plane, 35 nationalities from around the world. So many of those people had dedicated their lives to helping others.
Well, China has grounded all of the airlines flying Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes after the Ethiopian crash, which killed 8 Chinese citizens.
Cayman Airlines in the Caribbean has also grounded its MAX 8 planes. CBS News transportation correspondent Kris Van Cleave has more on the big problems Boeing is facing.
Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 is the second deadly crash involving the Boeing 737 MAX in less than 5 months. In October, a Lion Air Boeing 737 MAX 8 plunged into the Java Sea off the coast of Indonesia, killing all 189 people on board. While both incidents are still under investigation, there are already apparent similarities. The pilots of both 737 MAX jets reported technical difficulties. The two planes appeared to struggle to gain altitude before making a steep nosedive and crashing less than 15 minutes after takeoff. A preliminary report of the Lion Air crash indicates the pilots of that flight fought to control the plane because of an automatic safety system malfunction. Following the Lion Air crash, Boeing issued an advisory to 737 MAX pilots detailing existing procedures that can be used to recover from an abrupt nosedive. Stephen Wallace is the former head of accident investigation at the FAA.
I would not be reluctant to get on a 737 MAX, but I assure you the manufacturer is terribly concerned about this.
Roughly 350 737 MAX jets are in service around the world, and Boeing has orders pending for nearly 5,000. The 737 MAX that crashed Sunday was delivered to Ethiopian Airlines in mid-November. The airline is one of Africa's leading carriers.
For the most part, airlines that are flying modern Western equipment and taking the training that goes with them have a far superior safety records.
And Kris is joining us with more. So, Kris, we know the black boxes have been recovered. What more do we expect to learn from the black box that we haven't already?
Well, so from the voice recorder, the investigators want to hear what happened in the cockpit. They want to hear the conversations between the pilots leading up to this crash. From the data recorder, that's going to record hundreds of data points that will give them a sense for what may have happened, how the plane was functioning during this time. It will give us a sense if there was a sensor malfunction like we saw in Lion Air, or if it was a completely unrelated other issue. Right now, we really don't know why this plane crashed. We have very little information. We know that it struggled to gain altitude. It didn't get above about 1,000 feet off the ground. We know that it was going very fast. And that's really about it. That's unusual, but certainly doesn't give us a sense as to what happened to result in this crash. The hope is that the two black boxes will start to answer some of those questions for investigators.
You talked about the Lion Air crash, which I think was the first time that we heard about this type of plane, this brand new model of plane, and we learned about the sensor problem and that pilots were given, I think, and you can correct me, but some sort of like training on how to override the situation if that happens again. So then, since then, have these planes been safety concerns at all, or have, you know, since Lion Air, has it been fine flying?
American, Southwest, United all fly a version of the MAX. In fact, I was on one on Friday coming back from a shoot into Washington. So they are flying today in the United States. There are about 60 of them in service. The U.S. airlines are sticking with them. The 737 has a really good safety record. That said, you have two very new airplanes, two 737 MAX 8s that have now crashed. We don't know the cause of this most recent one, but it does raise obvious questions. The system you're talking about, it basically what malfunctioned in the Lion Air crash is a system that was designed to automatically prevent the plane from going into a stall. Basically, if the nose was going up too high, that can result in the plane losing speed and stalling. So the system is supposed to pitch the nose down to bring the plane to level. Well, if the sensor malfunctions and it thinks your nose is up and you're not, it can put the plane into a dive. The way to turn that off is a standard procedure that has been a standard procedure on the Boeing 737 for decades. So that Boeing reminder was essentially, this is how you address a pitch issue. These are the procedures, and in theory, pilots should have already known that. What they didn't necessarily know was that this automatic system was there. It would stand to reason that every 737 MAX pilot now knows about that system post Lion Air.
And Kris, as we noted in your reporting, China has decided to ground the 737 MAX 8, so is the Cayman Islands, but the United States has not. So that's kind of an intriguing question, why the Chinese would do something like this. We know that obviously there were some Chinese citizens on the Ethiopian airplane. Why won't the United States, the three carriers that fly this plane, why are they not thinking along the same lines?
Well, because we don't know what happened in this crash. And I think if you can establish a pattern or a reason to be concerned, you may see the FAA take action. We know that Boeing is working on a software update to address some of the lessons learned in the Lion Air crash. But at this point, it's just simply too early to know why the Ethiopian Airlines plane crashed. As we know more, and we should in the next couple of days, now that the black boxes have been recovered, you may see action be taken very quickly if there's a reason to. But the FAA just hasn't moved on this yet because they don't know what the problem is. You know, as soon as we have a better sense for that, you may see that. But United, American, Southwest all believe the airplane is safe and are continuing to operate it today.
All right, Kris, thank you so much.